Hey everybody, and welcome back to another severe storm thermal weather forecast. In this forecast, we have Hurricane Aaron to talk about. Does it hit land or does it go out to sea? We'll break down that in depth on this forecast. All right, so here is Aaron right now as a tropical storm, a very weak tropical storm at that. Actually, it almost tried to flirt with tropical depression status. It turned so weak this morning, mainly due to the fact that we have all the Saharan dust coming off of the coast of Africa with all this flow here, and that has caused Aaron to struggle to maintain its convection, and that's what we're likely going to continue to see in this area over the course of the next 24 to 48 hours before it gets into this area where I expect it to explode in intensity. And the reason I anticipate this hurricane to explode in intensity once it gets past, the northern Leeward Islands as well as the Caribbean, we are likely going to see some 25 to 30 degrees Celsius sea surface temperatures in this area, which is more than supportive of rapid intensification. All right, 28 to 30 degree Celsius waters is nothing you want to see when you're tracking a hurricane coming from the main development region, all right? This is why it's struggling to maintain, all right? Really cool sea surface temperatures as well as wind shear trying to get into it, all right? We'll take a look at that here actually in a second, but like I said before, if you have anything in this area, it's going to blow up, all right? And in this case, Aaron is likely going to be somewhere into here, all right? So, I mean, you have just a lot of juice to get these, these convective impulses in Aaron to fire off. And I would not be shocked if this thing undergoes rapid intensification, like I said before, as we head in towards late week and towards the weekend. Taking a look now at our upper level wind energy across the tropics as we head in towards late tomorrow afternoon. Notice here, this is exactly why Aaron is maintaining to struggle across these areas, all right? Saharan dust is continuing to infiltrate into the tropics, and it's basically getting wrapped around itself, which is maintaining the weakness of this tropical storm. Tomorrow, I do not therefore expect it to be a hurricane. Once we get into Thursday, this is when things start to get a little interesting, all right? This is when it looks like we're going to start getting some upper level divergence away from the low pressure center, all right? That's essentially going to take all the Saharan dust and stuff and take it all the way out to sea, all right? Meanwhile, we have our fast intensifying low pressure system, all right? I think after Friday, there are like 100% favorability for rapid intensification, all right? I see no reason why it shouldn't. And notice here by late Friday afternoon, I mean, look at this. I mean, you still have just so much divergence going around this storm system, all right? This could be a very powerful hurricane by Saturday, all right? I would not be shocked to see that. And the faster it turns strong, the key is the faster it'll turn north, all right? We'll take a look at steering currents and stuff here in a few minutes, but I just wanted to let you guys know a weaker storm means a bad situation for the eastern United States, but if it's a stronger storm, it should be able to recurve pretty quickly. Therefore, Bermuda would be in the, the impact zone. All right, notice here as we head into the daytime hours on Saturday how, this divergence just continues, and it's even more pronounced than Friday and Thursday. All right, just look at this. This divergence is just off the charts bad for these areas, all right? This is just going to allow this hurricane to thrive so much so that it's going to create its own environment and its big-time wind field, all right? Its wind field could expand hundreds of miles, all right? Tropical storm force at the least, all right? So even though this low-pressure system will likely go over here, I wouldn't be shocked if we still have tropical storm winds as far west as, the eastern United States. It wouldn't be impossible, all right? So the closer this storm gets to the United States, the worse the impacts, all right? And because this is going to undergo rapid intensification, as you can see here, as we head into the day on Sunday, that's going to prevent any dry air from entering. All right, now it looks like it probably will try, or dry air will attempt to combat this convection. However, I just don't see it because of all this divergence we're going to be dealing with the days prior. All right, this is going to continue to spray lots of moisture throughout the tropics. All right, this isn't only a moist field for this hurricane. This is a moist field for the entire tropics. So your dry air is going to be backed up all the way over here and maybe even over here. All right, there's literally all the moisture it needs in this area. Therefore, what happens Monday and Tuesday, look at how fast this pressure drops. All right, Wolf, 933 millibar category 5, high in category 4, possibly low in category 5 hurricane by Tuesday. All right, notice this divergence. I think it is highly favorable that we get a strong category 3, category 4, and if you ask me, yes, I think a category 5 is certainly not off the charts. All right, or not off the table. All right, in not F5. Category 5 can do lots of damage, so we hope that this stays out to sea. But I still think Bermuda and the eastern United States should keep a watchful eye, especially here and here. All right, Bermuda and all the way from South Carolina up to Pennsylvania and New Jersey. All right, I tell you why is because by Wednesday, the European model wants this thing being a really close call to the eastern United States. All right, and look at this. I mean, you still have lots of divergence, so I see no reason this shouldn't be a major hurricane next Wednesday. All right, I still think this is going to be a very powerful hurricane with very powerful storm surge and very powerful wind. All right, and I will say that even if it's just only 100 miles offshore, I think we should still see some storm surge here. All right, so some impacts are definitely on the table, even though this will likely be a couple 100 miles offshore. All right, large waves and rip currents will be likely at the least. Even if this for some reason slips east and turns really, really sooner than, expected, I still think with this flow, we're going to be dealing with some really rough surf, and we're also going to be dealing with rip currents and very large waves, as well as maybe some minor storm surge if this is near Bermuda. If this is the case like the European model was showing, there would be some pretty strong storm surge and strong winds on the eastern seaboard, but let's just hope that scenario doesn't happen at this time. Overall, though, all conditions support a major hurricane. And now that we're done determining the hurricane strength, now let's take a look at where this could go. All right, and it's a very tricky forecast because as we head into the daytime hours tomorrow, two high pressure systems are going to develop. One right here, which is likely going to have flow like this, and another one over here, which is going to have flow like this. All right, this is likely not going to steer air in, but this one is likely going to be responsible for keeping it on a east to west trajectory, if not maybe east southeast to about west northwest. All right, something like that. All right, I had to think about that there. But as we head into the daytime hours on Thursday, I mean, just look at this. I mean, you got these two high pressure systems steering air in. Notice here, I mean, you got flow here and you got flow here as well steering air in. I definitely think this is going to maintain the west or the east to west trajectory. All right, and that would put the Cayman Islands and the Leeward Islands at risk. All right, the Leeward Islands is definitely going to need to have a hurricane preparation plan by Saturday. All right, because I tell you, as we head into the daytime hours on Saturday, this is when this thing is forecast to hit. All right, now, where does it go after that? Well, there's no steering currents but here on Saturday. All right, and I tell you what's going to happen is if this is a stronger storm on Saturday, this is going to start trying to curve to the north. All right, stronger storms love gaining latitude, and weaker storms just don't want to go north. All right, so the weaker scenario would put the Cayman Islands and Leeward Islands and Caribbean at risk, and that would also put the southeast coast at risk for some really rough surf for the day on Saturday and Sunday, all right? Because as we head in towards next week, this thing is going to grow into a major hurricane. Like I said before, Category 4, possibly in the order of a 5, possible this is the case, all right? Notice here, area of high pressure continuing to, spew southerly winds just on the east side of Aaron. And notice here in the United States, we have an area blocking high pressure. Now, this is going to be crucial. If this is even a bit further east and Aaron is a bit further north, could this yank it in a little bit? That's a scenario I'm keeping an eye on because that scenario is becoming a bit more likely. All right, the models have been shifting this high pressure system eastward, and that is a big concern. Notice here that would, spew northeast to southwest winds. And as long as Aaron is going this way and it runs into this flow, right into the Carolinas, all right? I'm not saying this is a definite right now, so don't panic. But I'm saying that scenario is not off the table, nor is a scenario where it plows right into the southeast coast, or even still not ruling out a weaker storm going into Florida. All right, best scenario right now, though, is that this will likely steer out to sea. All right, that's what we're continuing to go with, and Bermuda having major impacts. All right, Bermuda needs to be prepared for this. I can't stress this enough because as we head into the daytime hours on Wednesday, just look at this. High pressure system right here is really steering Aaron at this point, and I would not be shocked if this steered right in between, anywhere from between Bermuda to the eastern United States. It could be anywhere from here to here along the line, all right? Or even maybe a bit slower or faster depending on its, progression. But still, look at this trough up here, all right? This is going to prevent it from going into the northeastern United States, but I am still not ruling out up here into areas of, the mid-Atlantic areas and, lower northeast, like New England back into areas of New Jersey. I'm still not ruling out some impacts from this, all right? Because, like I said before, if this high pressure system is a bit further south and east, which it unlikely will be, but I've seen that happen before, and storms just went right on that, I wouldn't be shocked if this took a little ride up into areas of the New England states. All right, that is just something we're really going to have to keep an eye on as we head in towards Wednesday and Thursday. Bottom line, though, that is too close for comfort for you folks in the North Carolina region, as well as the Mid-Atlantic. And you notice here as we head in towards Thursday of next week, this model likes to show Aaron get picked up by this trough, and if this were the case, this would be yanked out to sea almost certainly, which is good news. But like I said before that is the uncertainty. Does this impact the United States in a major way with storm surge, damaging hurricane 100 plus mile per hour winds? Do we get, catastrophic flooding? That is going to be all dependent on the steering currents, all right, and how fast Aaron strengthens, all right? A weaker storm is going to go west for longer, and it's going to fail to curve north. But if it's a stronger storm, it's going to do that recurve north, sooner, all right? And that's the best case scenario as of right now, in my opinion. So definitely something to watch as we head in towards next week for not only the potential for a Bermuda impactful major impact storm, but also the potential, at least an unlikely scenario, but still a 10 to 20% chance of a U.S. landfall as well. And now let's see what our ensemble models have to say for the track of Aaron. All right, notice here that we have a lot of members showing this over the course of the next few days, kind of headed towards the Leeward Islands like this, all right? Any ensemble model has it in this corridor right here, which means the Leeward Islands would need to be on some alert, all right? I would definitely have some preparations ready. Get your supplies ready for your hurricane preparation plan and stuff like that, all right? Because I think this could definitely be a low-end hurricane by the time it gets to you guys, all right, before it rapidly intensifies and slingshots north whenever it does, all right? It's definitely at the least going to be a tropical storm, all right, or even low-end hurricane, so definitely be ready for that. if you live in the northern Leeward Islands, as these continue to shift off towards the south of with the 0Z and 12Z runs. Notice here with the 12Z run, GEFS track shows 1,006 millibar low already, you know, that's accurate, but going all the way up here, these members start to really spread out. Notice these members pointing towards the United States. I think that's still a possibility. Like I said before, the steering currents definitely lead to the possibility of this being yanked west, all right? That's a more unlikely scenario right now, but I'm still not ruling that out. I definitely think, though, that this bulky area right here is a lot of uncertainty, all right? So there's a lot of question marks as to where this likes to go, but I definitely think, per this model, all right, I definitely think you guys should watch out if you live in the Leeward Islands and Dominican Republic and all these areas. All right, I can't stress that enough. So please make sure you're watching there. Even if this storm doesn't even scrape you with wind and stuff, you guys are still going to have rip currents that could shut down beaches, and we are likely also going to be dealing with some rough surf. All right, so make sure you're ready for that. If you're planning any vacations down there, GEPS has a storm closer to areas of the Lesser Antilles, which could put these areas in the eye. That is definitely something to keep an eye on, all right? The main area of where this eye could go is in the middle here. But I definitely think the eye, or the middle of the storm, could potentially try to traverse the Leeward Islands, Dominican Republic, and eastern Cuba, all right? I'm definitely not ruling that out. And you notice here how some of these members still try to take it toward the United States, all right? Not many do, but they are something to keep an eye on, all right? Because even if it's all the way out here, I still think we're going to be dealing with lots of rough surf. We're still going to be dealing with lots of rip currents along the East Coast, all right? If you're in the Carolinas, Georgia, Florida, you know, Virginia, all the way up the coastline of the eastern United States seaboard, you guys need to be on alert, all right? If you're going on a trip, make sure you're aware that the beaches will likely be hazardous. And taking a look here at our, you know, intensity of the hurricane over the course of the next few days or so, all right? 168 hours this goes out to, all right? The models are starting to, this is where it starts to get uncertain of where it goes, all right? When does it intensify very rapidly? Most members like to get it to a high end 3 and a low end 4 by hour 144 to 168. Though there's also a handful of models or more that like to keep this under hurricane status, which I think are outliers here. I think these could be something, you know, 1 or 2 category 1 or 2 hurricane. But I think the most likely scenario right now is these ones clustered together, all right? I do think, though, it could be anywhere in this area, all right? From a high-end Cat 1 to, you know, a low-end Cat 4 by hour 168. That is just a lot of uncertainty in the forecast models at this time. So be sure you're staying tuned to the National Hurricane Center, as they will have updates every single day on the path. And also tune into Tropical Tidbits, and they have graphics there. That's what we were using this video. But anyways, that was what we were going to cover for this video. Not much more to talk about. There is severe weather out there, but the tropics is kind of a bit more, you know, a bit more primed right now than severe. Well, I will say there is a severe weather threat for the upper Midwest as we head in towards Thursday, and we might cover that for the daytime hours tomorrow. But for now, that's it for this video. I will have a severe weather update for you folks tomorrow. Stay safe out there and have your hurricane preparations ready if you live in the Leeward Islands as well as the Lesser Antilles, just in case this storm does a sneaky turn.